I'm thinking about beauty, and particularly the beauty of bodies, but I'm also thinking about art, and if not beauty, then at least some kind of aesthetic appreciation of contemporary modern art. I suppose this is triggered because I was just walking through town and there was a bus went past, and on the side of it was a large like strip advert for, I think it was for like a calendar or something, a charity calendar for a local hospital actually. But the main image was a young woman, about 19 or 20 I guess, blonde, lying down wearing lingerie. Beautiful woman, very attractively posed, and I think probably photoshopped a wee bit. Yeah, and undoubtedly beautiful. But that's a bit weird, isn't it, really? And I don't want to get into the sexual politics right now, although I might later. But I'm thinking about this beauty thing. And one of the quotations that I've used in previous videos that I quite like, it's not cast in stone, but it's quite interesting, is this idea that beauty is the promise of function. So when we see something beautiful, when our bodies respond in a way, or our minds respond aesthetically and say that thing is beautiful, the theory goes that what's happening there is that there's kind of atavistic mechanisms going on in our bodies and brains which are responding to that as part of a kind of evolutionarily determined survival function. So we see something beautiful, we identify something as beautiful because it seems to be promising some survival potential for ourselves or for our gene line. And the example I've used before, which has been used in the literature, is we find certain landscapes beautiful because those are landscapes that would provide food and shelter for us should we be the kinds of hunter-gatherers that we spend most of our history being. And that seems to transcend culture. There's small variations, but generally right across culture people like the same kinds of landscapes or find the same chocolate box images of landscapes attractive. So that's the theory of that. And the same thing applies to the beauty of bodies, so the theory goes that a beautiful body or a beautiful face, a beautiful person is beautiful, or we feel the sense of beauty rising in us because we are identifying the function of that person. In other words, their suitability as a reproductive mate, and not just a mate, but possibly a kind of partner in some kind of child-raising scheme, that kind of thing. I mean, when it's applied to women, it's usually those things like childbearing hips and full lips and that kind of stuff, and symmetrical features indicating health. It's that kind of stuff. I mean, it's contested, but that's the idea of it. And in a man, it tends to be, the signifiers of strength and ability to provide. Those are only the first kinds of responses. I mean, all of the people who write on this kind of stuff would say that yes, those are the kind of ancient default settings that we might have been useful, but we haven't stopped evolving, nor have we not put layers of other kinds of acculturation on top of that. So whilst we might like those bodies and respond very quickly to those bodies and faces, male and female, we also spend a lot of time as conscious, accultured human beings learning about other kinds of bodies and learning other kinds of aesthetics. Effectively, we learn to be physically attracted to other things. That's the idea. I haven't seen any evidence of that in body terms. This isn't to say it doesn't exist. I haven't read any literature that supports that in terms of the beauty of faces and the beauty of bodies, but it might well be out there. But it is pretty standard understanding in the arts. Most contemporary art, certainly 20th century contemporary art, or a lot of it, is not immediately beautiful. In fact, most people who have no training in the arts, or a lot of people who have no training in the arts, say bad things about contemporary artworks. Everything from Duchamp's Fountain, which is a urinal, early part of the 20th century, through Carl André's bricks, the equivalent 8 he did in the 1960s, a pile of bricks, to Damien Hirst's Mother and Child Divided, cows cut in half or sharks in fish tanks. You know, people say, oh, it's just crap, it's rubbish, you know, my kid could do that. It's all that kind of a language around it. But, you know, if you've had an art education, it's different. Or even if you've just spent some time with this stuff, I don't make quick decisions. If you don't go into it with the expectation of seeing something that responds to your need for functionality, or expect to get the immediate sense of beauty or something like beauty, immediate kind of aesthetic response that you would with a nice painting of a landscape or a nice painting of a beautiful woman lying in her lingerie. But with a bit of time with these objects and these paintings and these ideas, you do start to develop a sense of, I think it is beauty actually. I mean, I look at something like Damien Hirst's pictures. I don't like his diamond skull, the most recent thing he did, but some of his, some of the mother and child divided, and the shark in a fish tank, the impossibility of death in the mind of someone living, I think it's called. And I think it's just beautiful. I really do. Even some of Sarah Lucas's stuff. Sarah Lucas uses really kind of mundane objects in her artworks, these kind of sculptural artworks. They're usually just assemblages of quite crude objects, and they're usually about kind of crude themes. She did this piece called, I think it's called Bunny, and it's like a pair of tights stretched over the back of a chair with the legs stuffed a bit, so it looks vaguely like a pair of bunny ears. But there's something really beautiful, I think, about it, even though it's completely coarse and crude in terms of its immediate aesthetic appeal. You know, but the kind of ideas that float around within it, to do with, I don't know, it takes too long to go into, but all the various ideas that are informing that work, I just think are beautiful. I think they do the things that beauty does, and I'm not sure what function they promise. They seem to promise a conceptual function, or an idea function, or a kind of opening function, rather than the kind of closing down into the functionality of, oh, I could live in that landscape, or the closing down of, oh, I could have sex with that woman lying down with lingerie. Instead of doing that kind of thing, they do the opening out thing. They say, oh, the functionality here is much more divergent, or even, you know, the functionality of here is broken. There's what I thought was function is now much more, I can't put it into words, I'm sorry. Anyhow, something like that. So to that extent, I mean, certainly I've spent a lot of my time around art since I didn't really get into it until I was in my mid-20s, to be honest, but I spent a lot of my time around art since, and I feel I know a reasonable amount about it. And I do get well, not exactly the same sense, but I do get there's an aesthetic component there, which I think if you came to it cold and were expecting beautiful landscapes and beautiful bodies, you wouldn't get. But it isn't to say that beauty isn't there, and it isn't to say that something which relates to functionality isn't there. And I think it's because of a kind of aestheticized training, or training in aesthetics, which is perhaps more appropriate to the culture that we live in now, rather than a hunter-gatherer culture. And I kind of wish the same thing was true of bodies a bit. Perhaps it is. You know, because the body on the side of that bus would have been perfectly beautiful, I'm sure. I think it was, maybe not, in a hunter-gatherer environment. It's a shame we don't have, I don't know, classes in the aesthetic appreciation of other people's minds, or other people's lives, that kind of thing. So you can, you know, experience the beauty of another person in a way that I can appreciate the beauty of a Sarah Lucas sculpture or a Damien Hirst shark in a fish tank.